The deal is this. Tell you, when I was a kid, that read Dropper Anton Wilson, all this real. Tell you, when I was a kid, that read Dropper Anton Wilson, all this real. Dude, I'm pissed. Dude, I'm pissed. Come on. What? Okay, by the time we finish this, you're all going to be practicing magicians.
I'm Jeremy Greer.
And I'm Gary Butterfield.
And this is Days of Future Cast, the podcast where Gary and I are covering X-Men comics. We're currently at the very beginning of New X-Men by Grant Morrison. We finished the E is for Extinction arc. We're introduced to our overarching villain for the most part, Cassandra Nova. And we have been introduced to our team of X-Men, and we are on our first annual issue.
To be introduced to our other main villain.
Absolutely.
For this arc. I mean, of two other main villains, actually.
Yeah.
Of this arc. So, the three pillars of villainhood.
Just a quick note, if you're reading this on Marvel Unlimited, it's weird. Me and Gary were just talking about the weird way that they do annuals or like giant size issues. They're listed as a different series. So if you're reading along, like you will need to, it's not in the New X-Men section. It's in the New X-Men annual section where there's only one issue because Marvel are just fucking weird about things sometimes. So, And I'm going to put all of that stuff up. We have a schedule page on the website. So daysoffuturecast.com/schedule. I was actually in the middle of typing all of this stuff out. So if you are curious about where we're going to be and when, you can go there. And
yeah. Because right now, everything is fitting pretty evenly. Like doing the intro episode in a 3-issue arc, very even. This episode, annual in a 3-issue arc, very even. In the future, it's going to get a little bit more, tricky in terms of sessions and stuff. So it'll be useful to have that guide.
Yeah.
Jeremy, astute listeners to the show will note this is not the first time the U-Men have shown up.
That's true.
On this podcast.
That's true.
If you listen to the Diggity Duck bundle, covering the absolutely abyssal X-Men anime, they also said that they were the U-Men for some reason, but they just wanted to have giant robots because it's a horrible cartoon.
Yes. And that's something that the U-Men does pretty well, is giant, horrible-looking robots. So that fit in. It was a perfect
Just imagine them without a philosophy or without dialogue, and that's the X-Men anime version of them.
Or any character whatsoever. I guess that covers dialogue, but
just two weird generic villains who look like they escaped from a Metal Gear game, basically, in the anime. And here we actually get our good boy, John Sublime.
Yes.
Who I like as a villain quite a bit. Everybody who came afterwards who did stuff with this character sucked. I felt like they didn't understand it.
Mm-hmm.
Like they didn't actually get what Sublime was, which is one of the big reveals for the end of this whole run. When we get to the future, like the Dark Sentinel future arc of this.
This is also going to introduce a pretty controversial character in Zorn.
Yes, yeah.
Zorn is super interesting to me because I didn't know, just reading this out of context, you get here and you're like, oh, this is Zorn. He's a super powerful mutant. And then like the stuff that happens with him throughout the rest of the series is so interesting and weird. And then there's this huge twist, and I'm going to be I haven't gotten there in my reread yet, but I'm going to be curious how that twist lands for me now, because back then it was like, what? That doesn't make any sense. And I kind of still feel like it doesn't make any sense. So
I bet you it'll land better.
Yeah.
I could be wrong, but I have on reread, I have appreciated it. And when they start introducing the foreshadowing, which is not necessarily super evident in this issue, like the foreshadowing is stuff where it's like the things that happen in this are not incompatible with the twist. But when they start introducing that, it is actually pretty good. The other thing I thought you were going to say when you talked about introducing Zorn is that like Zorn is unique to this run and unique to this arc, has a big payoff, whether it works for, an individual reader or not. But then there's this huge controversy where like Marvel liked the character and character design and said, actually, nope, undo that twist. There actually is a Zorn. He has a twin brother. They're both, so for a little while they did a bunch of work to undo all this stuff.
Jesus,
I don't know if you've read any of those comics.
No, I haven't. I've read comics with Zorn in them, like past this, right? And just like he's just a dude like with a power. Like I think he was on one of the X-Force runs that I was reading for a while.
It's so lame. Like and Grant Morrison hated it. Like he was like really mad about it, and I'm really mad about it, and it's so dumb. There's a part, one of them, I think one of the comics where this stuff happens is in Brian Bendis's New Avengers run. There's an arc where there's like a big evil Zorn kind of thing. Like a guy in Canada who gets everyone's powers explodes and he just screams Zorn at a certain point. And it's one of the worst comics I've ever read. And I always thought I never forgot that comic because Brian Bendis taught at PSU when I was going there. And he taught a class on making graphic novels. And to get into the class, you had to write him like a personal essay, like basically just like demonstrating your dedication, you know? And I just want to be like, dog, I've read that whole Zorn thing. Like, I'm not going to like beg to have you teach me how to write graphic novels. Like, I have read some absolutely atrocious comics from you. Like, I am not going to undignify myself just to be in the same room with you.
That,
you know? And I was just thinking about that class and just everyone just like bending over backwards to ask that dude's D. And just, I'm glad I did not do it.
That Zorn yell reminds me of that thing that goes around from Xena on the internet quite a bit, where the guy read the direction, the stage direction.
Oh, from Hercules.
Hercules, that's what it is. Yeah,
disappointed. Yeah. That was me when they had that Zorn twist.
Disappointed Gary.
Do you want to, before we get into this, do you want to talk about, this is our first guest artist. Do you want to talk about Lionel Yu?
You have summed up all of my knowledge about Lionel Yu. So
Lionel Yu.
Sure, go ahead, Gary.
Well, just I don't know anything about the biography. I just, in general, I think this is pretty good. It reminds me a lot. There's an indie artist named Frank Gehry who does the same kind of horizontal lines on everything, like the kind of very specific kind of shading.
Yeah.
This guy does. I think it's really interesting to kind of see that in a big superhero thing. I think some of his blocking is not great. There are a couple of scenes where it's kind of hard to tell what things are in relation to each other. Yes, which is super important in comics.
I was going to bring that up. Like some of the action in here is a little muddled for me.
A little messy.
Like, what just happened?
Yeah.
But yeah, overall, I like it a lot. Like it's kind of messy in a way that I really enjoy and think works really well for like this kind of story, where you know the X-Men are doing some X-Men shit, and like it's gonna get a little messy sometimes.
It's gritty. Yeah, this is a gritty ass story. So
the just to talk about it a little bit, like the cover is really bad though. Like,
I agree. It's like a pencil sketch. It's not,
it's weird that they like it's a pretty basic setup, but like it's just it doesn't feel finished at all, which is kind of surprising.
Yeah, this looks like fan art to me. Mm-hmm. Like somebody streamed this on Twitch, like doing this with a Wacom tablet.
Yeah, but were they wearing a bra or were they not wearing a bra?
ASMR, Liu draws the cover to X-Men Annual 2001.
I don't know if have you seen that controversy or not with the people yelling at women for not wearing bras on Twitch? Yeah, what a fucking anyway.
Yeah, it's gross. It's disgusting. The other thing too that is worth noting is the aspect ratio of this. Yes, this is a horizontal comic,
16:9. No,
Disney Plus fucked up this Marvel property as well. It's like it is you read it sideways. So everything is kind of widescreen, which like works okay. I don't think it adds too much. It feels a little gimmicky to me, but
it's a little gimmicky. I will say this, like just reading this on an iPad, that because my iPad has the ability to stand up on its own like horizontally, this just makes it real easy to read. Like I can breeze through this thing real quick.
Oh yeah, easier to read than in comic form, where you're like laying the comic down and like flipping it up like a calendar.
Yes, absolutely. And it's not like a lot of times, especially on tablets, I find like the screens, the 2-page spreads are a little busy, and you kind of have to zoom in to see text and everything. But like this feels a lot like they specifically made everything kind of big. I don't know how this looked like in an actual issue format, because like I would assume that that middle binding would really get in the way. Like even on the first page, or like it would seem like the central like Zorn's head would be right in that middle of that page. Like, hey, thanks for the staple.
Like, totally. And in the big like thick hardcover that I had this in, it was so obnoxious. Like it just like was not easy to read. So
yeah, don't
experiment with format.
That's the.
Like, I don't know if something worked for the entire history of comics. Maybe leave it. So
And it's a page. They call it a page for a reason.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's start into it. We are introduced to Zorn, and he's basically a dude that has many chains wrapped over him, and he's got like this iron helmet that's also attached to a bunch of tubes and everything. And someone off panel is saying, "Zorn, you have a new master now." So like you get the idea that like this dude is super powerful and super dangerous, and also super imprisoned.
Yes. Yep. He looks like the Anima summon from Final Fantasy X, sort of.
Okay. You've played a lot more Final Fantasy than I have, so
I have, to my chagrin. So we're kind of introduced to our primary kind of antagonist for this, and what we're dealing with is the Chinese government, and how they kind of treat mutants. There is a general here who is named later, but he is basically a broker for mutants, selling them to somebody over Skype. Named John Sublime.
Yes.
And this is the first appearance of John Sublime.
I like to think that they use Slack video conferencing because, it's private.
That's probably. They're probably not using Skype.
Slack didn't even exist back then. I just think that's funny. Like, send John Sublime an invite to my Slack, my Patreon Slack. Yes, and they do a demonstration to show Zorn's powers. So they everybody puts on these lead eye shades, and then they unlock part of his helmet and have him look at two children, and they are just literally liquefied. So like the power that he has in his head is like just will literally just they even say like it could have powered cities everywhere, but they chained him up and locked him up, and now it's just dangerous. Yeah,
now he's a weapon. Yeah, there's a great little detail here. They talk about the subjects. He's talking about the test subjects they has. And he's like, "Oh, we didn't need her. We just need her hands," which introduces the U-Man concept. And when it shows the two test subjects, one of them has bandaged hands, like is missing her hands.
What a bummer!
They stole them because they had laser eyeballs in the palms.
What a cool power!
Exactly. Like the little side thing. And it's introduced to the U-Man's entire steez. Like their whole bit is that they are transhumanists. Who harvest mutants for parts to become mutants. So you graft on, the idea being is that if you put Cyclops' eyes into your eyes, you'd have Cyclops' powers.
Absolutely, which is definitely the way it works. Also, in the background of a lot of these panels, there's these giant robots that we mentioned earlier. They're not robots; they're people in robot suits. We'll explain as we get there, like what their deal is. But these are just people in weird robot suits that are kind of doing John Sublime's bidding on his behalf.
Yes. Yep. So we're introduced to the general is named Oyan. His name Aoyan. I don't know how to pronounce Ao. I assume it's Oyan.
Somewhere Mai is pounding her motorcycle.
Yes. I'm so sorry, Mai.
When I was covering Cowboy Bebop, like I was trying to pronounce like writers' names and everything, and every time I was like, "I'm so sorry, Mai. I'm so sorry."
Yeah, Mai is going to murder us. So we're introduced. We get our title page. The name of the story is "The Man from Room X."
Yes.
And we're introduced to a subplot that's going to be a really important part of this whole arc, which is Emma Frost flirting with Cyclops, trying to seduce Cyclops. Which is just, and also kind of getting to the root of Cyclops' marriage problems here.
So our team in this is going to be Wolverine, Cyclops, Emma, and Beast, and they have been dispatched out here because a mutant has died, and they're going to the funeral. This Emma relationship is like, I just love the fact that she just needles him constantly. Like it's throughout this book and throughout the series, like she kind of takes it as a challenge. Like, you were so stuck up, like I just want to break you a little bit.
Yeah. Again, like one of the things I love about this run is the way that Grant Morrison expresses these characters' sense of humor. Even Cyclops, very dry. Like, I'd be flattered by that if I didn't remember all the times you tried to kill us. There's just kind of a dry sense of humor to all of these people. Wolverine, like, lighten up, we're going to a funeral.
Yeah.
And we find out what they're doing is there's a character named Risk, who I swear is familiar to me. Like, I've seen Risk in like a, official handbook to the Marvel Universe or something.
I was definitely pronouncing that risque, which I guess probably should not.
Oh, it could be. Like, I don't know.
AKA the glamorous risque. That probably sounds like she's I don't know what do they even say what her mutant power was? I think they do at some point, but
she creates like little like black holes, like little hyper dense little energy bits.
Interesting. Yeah.
And stuff. Yeah, I barely remember it. But this is introducing us to a couple. They're meeting with their liaison here, which is Domino, Comics Domino, and the idea is they run these X Corporation things. This is one of those things that is left over from the run before this with Banshee. It was called the X Corps, like Corpse Corps, but Charles Xavier is rebranding them as X Corporation, and that is going to allow us on this run to kind of globetrot. Like whenever the X-Men are in a city, there is a local office of X-Men that is like, let's throw some new mutants and X-Force on the case.
Yeah.
Here's 4 members of X-Factor. Let's go. And they kind of run the local office.
Yeah. Domino kind of fills them in on the local situation that ever since the mutants began appearing, the Chinese government has not really been into this at all. In fact, they've just been killing the babies at birth. So, like, mutants aren't even allowed to exist in China. This, and then of course Domino is like, oh hey, like, and this is going to be very complicated. They need to open up an X corporation, and Charles Xavier announces that he's a mutant. Like, shit is going to go crazy.
Yeah. It's not good. And it's basically, it was just the 2 of them.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just this tiny little fly-by-night thing. Domino is resentful of it. I love this line where she's like, yes. We were given the mandate to monitor the mutant rights violations in, and I quote, Asia, which is a continent. This is a huge amount of space for 2 people.
Yes.
So they were tracking some mutant rights violations, and they found, the Risque had gone to one of the people who near her where she died was associated with Sublime Pharmaceuticals.
Mm-hmm.
So that is the idea is she was into some shit. She had uncovered something and was murdered for it.
Oh, here's her mutant. Risque could implode things with her mind, and interesting enough that the police believe she may have used it in self-defense, like actually killed herself so that they couldn't take her powers or take her organs or whatever. So super fucked up.
Yep. We see John Sublime has a book, The Third Species. So this is kind of like the Dianetics of this. It's a little bit of a cult. We cut over to him giving a seminar, basically laying out the U-Man philosophy.
Yes.
And there's a little bit of like, so the idea is, we're humans, mutants born in a human body, that's borrowing some language of some gender identity stuff that is probably not great. Maybe the language would be a little bit different if this didn't come out in 2001.
Sure.
That's something I noticed just on reread. I was like, that's a little like identify as a attack helicopter kind of stuff. To me, like I wish the language was a little bit different.
Yeah, and again, like, just, a 20-year-old comic at this point. Like, that doesn't excuse anything, but I'm also...
No.
Like, the fact that they don't lead into that, like, they don't ever, like, try to compare themselves to, to a trans person or any of this. They use that kind of language a little bit, but and they're explicitly evil. Like, there's no, well, what if they're right kind of bullshit going on. So, like, that to me kind of gives this whole thing a pass, and I'm willing to look past it.
They're explicit. It's a grift, too.
Yeah. Like
in this, which I don't think says anything about actual like trans people. I think that the idea here is that this guy is co-opting language, in order to create this cult, in order to further his own ends, which we'll later find out, like 30 issues down the road, he is a sentient bacteria virus thing. And, his own ends are pretty alien and weird.
And we also, we were introduced to these robots that call themselves Homo Perfectus, or the self-mutated. And basically, their whole steez is, we refuse to touch any of the ground or breathe the air of this world until we get the rights to be able to dictate our future, our genetic future. Which is fucking crazy. Like, what? Excuse me.
and one of the things I love about this run in general, and just like a really cool thing about the U-Men, I think one of the things that makes them awesome villains is that there's tons of relevant detail about how tough and horrible this is for them. Like their organs get rejected. Like they're constantly on immunosuppressants to, so that their body doesn't spit out these eyes that are not theirs. There's all this like, oh, once my wing grafts heal, I'll be able to do this. Like there's this weird, like kind of naivete to these people. It made me think of like recruiting incels.
Sure. Yeah.
For some reason, like I imagine the people who are recruited into this cult, basically are, desperate, vulnerable loners, essentially.
and so he has this book, and he's basically calling themselves the third species. So there's humans, there's mutants, and now there's the third species. Then we get in kind of the first big action scene of the book. Domino and Wolverine are preparing to kind of infiltrate this party. We're introduced to this dude who, or the general that we saw earlier, Ojan. But we know his mutant power, which is any hair, skin flakes, or dandruff become a short-lived, totally naked, briefly conscious Ojan golem. Like, he just spawns his own shitty golems wherever he goes.
He's the worst multiple man.
Jesus Christ.
Like, it's like Gattaca multiple man.
Can you fucking imagine having to deal with this, my man? Like, my God.
They're so disgusting. Mm-hmm. Like, they're like the Venture Brothers clones.
Yes.
When they're all gummy.
100%.
You know? Like, just being followed around by a bunch of gummy versions of you. You know, and that's why, we'll find out this comes later, but just, to lay the background, like, that is why he is in this little remote corner babysitting Zorn. Yeah. The government does not care for mutants. The official position is no mutants are on the payroll, so he has been basically exiled.
Yes.
It's the equivalent of like giving him a post in Siberia, or what have you. So they're talking about this assault. They're talking about Scott, like basically, and one of the things I like, again, I'm just talking tons of sugar about this run because I love it, is that in a movie you would show that Scott Summers is uptight by like vocal performance. Mm-hmm. So like the acting job might get it across. Here they can't do that. And they don't want to do internal monologue. They don't want to have thought bubbles. So they have characters refer to it, right? So every character who has been around Scott Summers recently has been like, God, what's going on with that guy? And that is a really good way to express like, oh, his like posture, his tone of voice, everything about him is uncomfortable. Like something is wrong. We don't want to just like have him think, God, I'm worried about my wife and stuff. We want to have his friends react around him.
Yes.
So Domino is like, oh, like what's going on with him? He has a gigantic stick up his ass. And Logan basically goes to bat for him. Like, hey, being taken over by one of the most evil things in the world is no joke. He's barely holding it together.
I like this, that right now he's clinging to sanity with his teeth gritted.
Yeah.
Like that's just like he came out of this horrible thing, and like Logan has experience with being experimented on or possessed or any of this stuff, so he knows what that's like, and he actually goes to bat for somebody that he's traditionally had a rivalry with, right? Like he's had and disagreements with, for him being like by the book Summers and Logan,
but respects,
but has a mutual respect for it and an appreciation for it at this point. And I just very small details like that in this comic just really kind of make these characters shine. It makes you like, again, they exist when they're not on the page, and I think that's something that this comic does better than almost anything out there.
Yep. They're getting ready to break into this building. Logan smells that Domino is horny.
One page, like what are we on? Page 11. Great, look at all of this detail. We're doing good. Page 12. I can smell you're horny.
Yeah, exactly.
Comic books, man.
Bub, you horny bub. So do you need some company after this? And basically they plan to have a bang afterwards. Have a bang. I think that's what the kids are
definitely
calling sex now. They're just gonna Cerebro and chill.
Slapping salami. Cerebro and chill is very good.
So they dive down there. We cut down. Sublime has shown up here. Like previous to this, he was Skyping. Now he is there.
Yes.
And they're basically just having a grotesque villain off here.
I like this a lot. His little, like, Ojan's little golems are so fucking disgusting in this. Like, and there's so many of them. Like, and it looks like Sublime is just looking around like, can you please get these guys away from me? Yeah.
Just really disgusting, and he's giving all this money. John, so he says like, oh, with all this money, people are going to mistake me for a capitalist. And he says, my fantasy is to have 2 white girls wrestle in crude oil until they suffocate like gulls on the beaches of Kuwait.
Wow.
Which is,
extremely specific.
And then, immediately John Sublime's like, yeah, mine's worse.
We're often prudes on this podcast. Sure. We talk about super horny stuff all the time. When I was reading this today, I was like, are 13-year-olds reading this? Like, what's the audience for this comic book in 2001? Like, were 13-year-olds reading about like 2 white girls wrestling in crude oil? Like, what is that okay? Parents.
And comics have generally like, I think that the average age for comics have always been considered to be for like teenage boys.
Mm-hmm.
And then in real life, it's always skewed a lot older.
Yeah.
Like ever since the 70s and 80s. You know, and that's one of the things that Grant Morrison wanted to undo, is like making this cool for kids again. But I do think that the average age of this book was probably us.
Yes.
You know, and I was 21 when this came out, and I was probably the target audience for it. Also, like seeing just, you know, New X-Men Annual 2001, I'm like, fuck, that's half my life ago. That does not feel right.
No, definitely not.
Like,
there have been 19 9/11. No, let's not go there.
Yeah.
Domino is kind of overhearing all of this, but she is quickly attacked by the leftovers of Ojan, which I guess is what you would call them, and she's able to activate her weird contact lens that gives her laser abilities. Like she has some weird contact lens that is super powered. So she, and she talks about like she almost shot off my own left nipple. Like why?
Yeah, I don't know what that line is doing there.
Yeah.
Again, just trying to like banter.
Yes,
I guess. She gets to the security system. She's seeing them, start to make their way down in this underground lab or what have you, and then catches over where Wolverine has broken into the party like James Bond, dressed up in his patch tuxedo.
The one, right?
Yeah, the one,
the single one.
Never been washed, bub. Yeah. Yeah.
It's still got the cuts from Sabretooth, bub.
Yeah. Yep. And again, Aojun and Sublime are just kind of, going back and forth.
Yeah.
Like, we say, hey, I've heard that these U-men live in agony, their grafts get rejected. And Sublime basically just like deflects everything. No direct answers for this whole thing.
And importantly, they are securing the keys to Zorn, like all of Zorn's like metal gear. Excuse me.
Yeah.
All of Zorn's like padlocks and bullshit. Like they're securing these keys into a computer that does a bunch of fancy shit, so that the code can't be broken. And that's when Ajan recognizes that Wolverine is in the crowd, but doesn't recognize him necessarily, but says, "We didn't invite you here. Who are you?" And that's when Wolverine attacks and causes this massive distraction, which allows Domino to sneak in and steal Zorn's keys.
I was just thinking about, so he fights, he slices across two of these golems, but they're wearing clothes.
Yes.
And they're like barely holding it together. They're like really disgusting. And I just was thinking about whether Aojin has to dress them or whether they can dress themselves. The idea of him like putting a sweater on these things is really disgusting to me.
Super gross. And does he, once they dissolve, because they're short lived, like once they die, does he have to then undress them, or does he just like knock some skin off of his finger? Like, okay, those are your clothes. Get them.
They just collapse into slime like the end of Gremlins 2 rather, just it's disgusting. This place is so nasty.
I do like this kind of splash page we get of Wolverine chopping through all of these dudes. Like this is good quality Wolverine content where all of these guys are in like 3-piece cuts, right?
Yeah,
like he's just leaving a trail of destruction behind him. And then Domino is like, the Wolverine is coming to get you. Ooh.
Yeah, it's really good. Wolverine just cutting through all these people. Meanwhile, the rest of the team are going down investigating where Risk died.
Yes.
Here.
And Emma kind of detects something beneath them, and she's like, "Whoa, this is extremely weird." And then Beast is like, "Yeah, something smells really bad, and there's some kind of concealed entrance." And Scott blows it up.
And they find this really, really horrible like mutant holding cell where they're holding these mutant slaves eventually to sell and cut apart. There's this like crazy caterpillar girl.
Definitely a Cronenberg here.
Yeah, totally Cronenberg. Really, really like terrifying body horror stuff. And saying in Mandarin, like, help, they took my wings away. So this is the organ farm where the U-Men are getting their stuff. I think that positioning this annual here, because the next main arc of the story we're going to talk about is dealing with the U-Men. And I think this is really, really necessary so you can know that they're unrepentant assholes.
Yes.
That some of the individual characters do have like a little bit of sympathy to them. There's a part where like the mask is taken off. They're like, please, this is my religion, and you might have a pang of sympathy, but they're definitely just trafficking in blood and misery. Like these are good fucking villains.
Yeah. These are pieces of shit. Like you're not going to feel bad if any of them die. on the next page, we go back to Wolverine and Domino. Wolverine's telling her, like, you need to get Zorn's keys. And she's like, I already did it. Guess what? It just happened to be the same number as my ex-boyfriend's telephone number. Like, she's just lucky that way, which is, we talked a lot of sugar about Domino and I almost called it X-Force and Deadpool 2. And here's the same way. Like, a luck power is one of the coolest things ever. Like, you can do so many crazy cool things with it. And sure enough, like, they have to book it out of a window because they're getting shot at, and there just happens to be a pool right beneath them.
Yeah, really great. We cut back over to the B team, who's underground. Beast is trying to comfort Caterpillar Lady, but he can't speak her language. And he wants to save her life. She recently had her wings cut off. But then the U-Man come up and shoot Beast with these like spinning blades that come out of the end of this gun. It looks extremely cool.
Yes.
And we have our fight down here.
Yes. The first thing that happens is Cyclops like blast one of their helmets off, and this guy starts freaking out because he's breathing the air. And then Emma comes up in her organic diamond form, looking fucking terrifying, and is like, organic diamond drill, frail human skull.
Yeah.
You see where
I like
this
organic
is
diamond drill, like at drill. Organic diamond wint.
Drill, but for like K Diamonds commercials is what you're going for there.
The love X drill. So they're getting some information basically. So they have the key and they're getting the information basically where Zorn is and where they're actually doing this vivisection.
Yes.
Stuff.
We're back to headquarters. Beast is chilling watching some Star Wars, which is an important detail, I think. Yeah. And
everybody's kind of debriefing about this, discussing what they're going to do now. They're basically having this X-Men, Emma's like, we have to kill him because Emma's right. But stuff, the X-Men incrementalist that the rest of the team is. And Scott's like, let's explore some other options. Emma, can you get a psychic read off this key? And this is something where, once we know the twist of this key, like all of this is planned by Zorn.
Yes.
We don't know that yet. But the idea here, so like you have to kind of just assume that the person who is Zorn, which I don't know why I'm dancing around it, but I am, knows somebody who could make this key that would give a false psychic impression. That doesn't feel impossible. This is a trap. So when she picks it up, she sees Zorn, this version of Zorn's origin story, which is just a kid in the field. He has a little star for a head. And it is, it's really horrible. It's very like, he should have been a genius. He should have been a Buddha. He was born in the wrong place in the wrong country, and they built a prison around him.
A couple of small details on the headquarters scene. I just like in the top left, I love like the way they're drawing Cyclops' pose, where his like feet are outstretched in a V and his like one arm behind his back in rigid posture, right? Like it's just and then in the scene where he's holding the keys, like you see a logo in his shirt and it's like branded X-Wear. Like it's
X-Wear, man.
And Gary, I'm almost 40 years old. I would buy X-Wear. I can't help it. Like I would it would be at least a small part of my wardrobe.
Yeah. Super good.
Yes. Eventually, Emma gets overwhelmed by these things that she's receiving from this key, so she turns into her her diamond form, where she says like she doesn't really have any emotions or telepathic powers. She basically has just no compassion, just a cruel sense of humor and a cold, hard heart. And Beast comes in. This was kind of weird because, like, in a couple pages,
he's just watching Star Wars.
Yeah, he was just watching Star Wars, but now he's like, the girl died on the table. She lost too much blood, and I'm like, are you a clone? Like, what's happening right now?
He's multitasking. Dark Beast. Oh no!
Oh God, it's too soon.
Sure, man. No. I think this was just a mistake. I've thought about this a lot. Unless he like finished watching Star Wars, then ran down, did some quick surgery, or like a surgery snack, and then. Or
just finished the surgery and then came back up, and like this is the time where he's he's re-emphasizing the point, which is the way that you can probably look at it. Either way,
totally.
I don't really care. It's just a weird moment. Like they specifically drew the Star Wars joke and then have this happen. So
he had to decompress with some Empire real quick, and then So we cut to bedtime. They're resting before they go and do this assault, basically. And Cyclops is having his, this is feels extremely real to me. Like he's having his little psychic phone call with Jean.
Mm-hmm.
He has every night, like when you're traveling and you just call your girl.
Yep.
Before bed,
mm-hmm.
Just to touch base. And I really love, she's like, hey, what's all this stuff? And he's just like, just download it from me while I'm sleeping. Imagine the kind of trust that it would require to like be married to a telepath.
Dude, it would be like, can you imagine being a telepath and like not peeking?
Totally.
Like, not. It's one thing to have the trust, and it's another thing to like just not do it. Like the
To have the
temptation
restraint.
would be in every single argument or every single doubt. Like I could just find out. Like it's just like having access to someone's text messages or something.
Yeah.
It's real bad. Yeah. Just to point out, like this manifestation of Jean in this like pink kind of fiery thing that they've got going on in this image is really good. Like
Yeah,
like
this
if
is awesome.
If this is the way my girlfriend appeared to me in my psychic communications, I would be way into it.
Yeah. It's awesome.
Yeah. Unfortunately, Autumn just shows up as a talking horse.
That made it that made it sound like it was extremely hot or horny. The way you said it, but people have never read the comic. It's just cool visuals.
Oh yeah. It's
You're
just
like,
extremely
if my
cool.
girlfriend
Yeah.
appeared this way, I'd be way into it. Like, no, it's just cool energy effects.
Yeah. There's,
It's good special effects.
She's got clothes going up to her neckline, right? Like she's
Yeah.
good. It's not horny at all.
Yeah, you can't even see that she has boobs. Like she's basically a statue.
But if speaking of horny, in the next page, Cyclops is asleep, and when Emma shows up with 2 glasses and a bottle of champagne, and it's like, "Hey, why don't you tell me more about this world of chastity?"
Yeah, like whoa,
and obviously wearing like either a very small little black dress or a negligee of some kind. So
yep, seducing Scott.
Yes.
We cut over to this Zorn prison / mutant farm here, and the U-Men are basically buying it. Like we'll have this place up as a total organ farm. In no time, we'll change the color scheme. We're going to redecorate.
Yes.
And Ao Yun basically doesn't care, but he's been kind of trying to warn, a little bit to say like, you don't actually know what you're getting into with Zorn. Like he escaped at one point. It took all of our men to try to subdue him. And my punishment for here, once I was actually my mutant suppression wore off. So I got out as a mutant, and that's why I'm here. Why would you ever want to be us?
Yes.
And Sublime's there. He has fresh wings, which we know where those wings came from, grafted onto his back.
And they don't look particularly like great. Like you could see like some major scarring going on and some major stitches that were required to do this. And also like he just straight up admits like my body is having trouble accepting this. But one day I will be able to fly. One day I will definitely fly. And they they open the like Zorn's cage and find out that his helmet is already off and he is just shining with this blue light.
Yeah, he's going Nova. Ao Yanning is just like his star is old and sick as well. They look at him, they're like, oh, he's going supernova, and they left a note. This is a trap that the X-Men have left.
Yes,
which is great. Like we didn't see them do this. I like the idea of the X-Men being like ahead. They leave a note that says, "Hey, we are the X-Men." Boo. And then they assault with their jets.
So
and missiles.
Who wrote the note? Out of this
Boo?
team, it's got to be Emma, right?
Yeah, Emma or Wolverine. I could see Wolverine doing the boo.
Okay.
But yeah. And also, Domino basically said it earlier when she. Wolverine's gonna get you. Ooh.
Yeah, it could be Domino. I couldn't remember if she actually showed up in this scene or not. Yeah, she definitely does. And then the X-Men attack. They're in the Blackbird. They send a bunch of missiles to like just destroy the outer rim of this. Like surprising, even Wolverine, who's like,
This line is so good.
Yeah, we can just do stuff like this now. Like what?
Yeah. Yeah. And Cyclops again, like we just did. We'll see who complains, which I love. What are they gonna do? Stop me?
This is one of the pages and that I think like most takes advantage of this format too, because like the action is just really, really cool in this one. Like the Blackbird flying around, missiles like swirling through the air, like just the destruction in the background looks really, really nice.
Yeah, the first thing with the Blackbird approaching with the missiles is a great image.
That one too. Yeah,
that's super good.
And the U-Men start filing out, and it's time for a fight. But before we go do that, Ao Yun, like John Sublime accuses Ao Yun of betraying them, and he's like, "Of course I did. Like you took me to a super hedonistic party. I watched those 2 white girls like kill each other in a vat of oil, and now I'm going to die today. See you later." And then one of the U-Men just cracks his neck from behind.
Yep. And we are introduced. The X-Men get in at this point, and they just see this blue light coming off of Zorn. And I love that one of the U-Men is just watching, and they just kind of talk for a second, because they're both confronted by this scary thing. There's a scene, actually, I started reading the Infinity stuff, the Hickman Avengers thing. And there's a scene very similar to this with AIM, where they come down to like some kind of anomaly, and AIM is investigating, and the Avengers just walk up behind AIM and they just start talking about it because they're confronted by, they're enemies, but they're confronted by something super crazy.
Yeah,
I really like.
So they walk into Zorn's room and see like this blue light, and that one of the men is describing as an event horizon. And Emma quickly says like, oh, like his thoughts are, there's nothing there. There's just emptiness. And Scott
and
says,
who do
like,
we know who has a helmet where you can't read his mind? And who do we never see without his helmet?
But Scott says basically like, hey, like that's not a machine and it's not a black hole. That's a person, and that's a person trying to commit suicide. Like it's up to us to talk him out of it. And I love this because like they've positioned Scott as like this kind of harsh, buck up his ass, stiff kind of dude. But like when it comes down to it, he's one of the most empathic members of this team, right? Like like seeing that in action, seeing him like, hey, like download me some kung fu, aka Chinese or Cantonese or whatever, like, and I will talk to this dude. I will talk him off the ledge, and it works. Like it actually, like he says, like the line here is like, think of this as basic physics terms. Like you just have to shed some of that gravity to come back to us. Like the way that he's winning him over is just feels natural and true to Scott's character.
Yeah, it's very funny. Like it's funny and it's great. Like I've said before, this is my favorite Scott Summers. Like him as competent and respectable as opposed to just a joke. He was my preferred Scott Summers. Like we have a lot of fun goofing on Cyclops, obviously, but like this is my favorite articulation. I like a Cyclops I can respect.
Yes.
And this run is full of people trying to convince Cyclops specifically, but the X-Men in general to kill, to abandon some of their principles. And a lot of times the correct answer is not. It is taking this kind of third way option, which later they talk about like, oh, this is the, those are old Magneto and Xavier ways. This is the third way, the mutant way, because he's going to explode. Like they think they're going to die if they don't kill him or get out of there. I love this line where they're, Domino's like, hey, in 60 seconds, we're all going to die. And Beast is like, don't worry, Scott's very good with the depressed.
Which is funny and true and kind of sad because it's true,
yeah,
right?
Totally.
Like it's the combination there is really, really good.
Yeah. And he talks Zorn down, of course, knowing what we know, Zorn was never going to actually do this.
Yes.
And he basically says, I could have built heaven on earth if they'd only let me. I could have laid the foundations for paradise here on earth. Again, really in line with the twist.
Yes.
And Scott gives him the keys to his prison, like basically frees him.
Mm-hmm. And this next page is one of my favorites too, because it's just Zorn standing in the kind of next to the wreckage of his prison with his helmet off, like this star as his head shining, and just looking at the sunset. And I was like, wow, the world seems so much smaller than I remembered, because he's been in prison for so long. Like he's been since a kid. And I just like, it's just a beautiful image. Like that sunset in the background is really great. Really great coloring on this issue. Yes, absolutely. They basically question like, hey, was it a good idea to set Zorn free? And he's like, well, he's not free. He just joined the X-Men. Yeah. So he's going to be a reserve member. We're gonna see him in the future. He's going to be incredibly instrumental to this next arc. Yes, these next couple arcs. So that's the annual, which does a great job of introducing both this character who's very important and this villain who's very important. So. And that's the episode for today, folks. So thank you everybody for listening. If you're wondering how to support the show, the best way to do it is at patreon.com/Duckfeed.tv, and there's a lot of rewards for doing so. Since we've relaunched, what could really help us out are new iTunes reviews to kind of boost us up in the charts or what have you. And if you don't have access to an iTunes account, that's fine. Just tell all of your X-Men friends about the show. Let them know that we have restarted. And if you should be able to go into Apple Podcasts and click on season 2 and get right to the comic books. So absolutely. Yeah. And next episode will be starting, I think it's Imperial is the name of that arc. Yes. Very excited for that. Probably my favorite Shi'ar story. Like, I mean, I'm surprised that Grant Morrison didn't like fucking, make the Savage Land good. So, like, what if? Well, thank you for listening. We'll be back soon, and until then, see you later. Good night.
These are the tales of the great.
Okay.
All right. Cool. Chatting with somebody on the Patreon who's considering patronizing us, and the one of the games they're thinking about suggesting is Left 4 Dead, which I hope they do.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
I'd love to cover Left 4 Dead.
You know, I've never really played that game at all.
It's good.
I like when that came out, like my access to that was a 360 version. And I just like did not understand multiplayer stuff. Like I'd been out of video games for a while, and I was like, I don't want to play with people online. That sounds terrible. Just never bothered to play it.
It's surprisingly really good. It's like it's very fun. It's not like an Overwatch kind of thing. Like you don't have powers or whatever, but the team, like the tactics, the teamwork required is really special.
But the characters still fuck, right? That's
no. It's not horny.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
I bet somebody has made Left 4 Dead porn, right?
Oh, totally. But like Left 4 Dead, did you say? I'm sure people have, but it's way rarer than like most fandoms. Like it's really quaint. Like the lady characters who are in it, like the second game, the lady character you have, like there's all kinds of just like horrible, shitty sexism and racism about it, as opposed to being horny. It's very quaint.
Oh,
you know,
Gary,
Uh-oh.
I have.
You found some stuff. I don't know, man. I might be good.
I'm gonna. You gotta click the link. I'm gonna make you do it.
I've never not clicked a link. So, oh no. Oh, what's wrong with his face?
What is wrong with everybody's face in this picture?
Oh, live out all your sexiest desirers.
Desirers.
Yeah. Like he's got like arse face. He looks like a preacher.
Yeah, and he's
it's very Silent Hill. This whole thing is very Silent Hill to me.
And the background looks like they have modded it to look like the Mushroom Kingdom, right?
Yeah, they are definitely a Mushroom Kingdom. Where's Sonic?
Is this the
look at the ground?
Oh, that
the
could
ground
be Sonic.
Is like checkerboard. Yeah, I think that might be Sonic.
Is this the equivalent, the video game equivalent of like renting a nice house in LA to film porn?
We're going to the Sonic area to do machinima porn with Left 4 Dead characters.
We're going to go to the casino level in Sonic.
Yeah, we're going to rent the Green Hill Zone.
All right, I'm not clicking on any more links because I googled Left 4 Dead horny. So
yeah. Well, that could have been honestly way worse. Like it wasn't somebody fucking like one of the monsters. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
it wasn't zombie dick.
Super worse. But yeah.